We were able to work on the snafus. They only gave us 10 cells at one time.
Hey, where are my troops? Troops! Troops!
You've seen old wartime cartoons before. Maybe a newsreel, maybe a patriotic short before a movie. Millions of American soldiers watched this one, in barracks, on bases, overseas in the dark. But you didn't, because this cartoon was classified. The US Army hired the team behind Bugs Bunny to make training films, then told them no limits. The result was profane, sexual, and violent in ways no American cartoon had ever been. We're going to show you the censored lines that got quietly erased, and the character's name is where the lie starts.
This is Snafu.
Number 50. It was produced on military budgets during 1943 and 1944, animated in black and white, and ran just a few minutes per short. The drawings look rough, the voice sounds goofy, but nothing about it was accidental. Every frame was planned by professionals working under Army supervision. Warner Brothers animators were pulled off commercial projects to focus on these films. Scripts were reviewed by military brass before a single cell was drawn. The result was a perfectly engineered piece of psychological training, disguised as slapstick. And slapstick was just the entry point.
Boy, this really is the life. No more worries, no more care.
Number 49. Military psychologists believed soldiers would tune out lectures. They'd heard enough yelling from sergeants. So the Army tried a different approach. Give them someone to laugh at. Snafu isn't brave. He isn't clever. He's lazy, horny, careless, and loud. Every short puts him in a situation where his worst instincts take over. Then he suffers for it. The goal wasn't inspiration, it was embarrassment by comparison. You weren't supposed to admire Snafu, you were supposed to feel smarter than him. And that sense of superiority was the trick that made soldiers actually pay attention.
Oh, you're perfectly safe, I am thinking. It's musty and dusty and mighty damn rusty.
Number 48. That's not subtext, that's the literal structure of every episode. Snafu does something stupid. Something bad happens. Sometimes he's embarrassed, sometimes he's injured, sometimes he's dead. The Army believed fear and humiliation worked faster than inspiration. They weren't trying to create heroes, they were trying to prevent mistakes. So they made Snafu into a walking warning label. The guy who does everything wrong so you don't have to. And the deaths weren't metaphors.
What was that I heard you say, my little sauerkraut?
Number 47. Snafu dies in nearly every way imaginable. In some shorts, he's simply erased, gone in an instant, mid-stupidity.
Oh, brother Snafu, what I wouldn't give for your job.
And death is never treated as tragic. It's treated as earned. The cartoons don't mourn him, they mock him. The music swells into a punchline.
The Aleutians are a string of island bases extending over 1,000 miles westward from the Alaskan Peninsula.
The narrator moves on. This wasn't cruelty for its own sake, it was deliberate. Military officials believed that if soldiers laughed at Snafu dying, they'd remember why he died. Humor made the lesson stick. But it also meant these films couldn't be shown to the public, especially children.
It's been a wonderful evening, and I'd like to stay some more.
Number 46. Cursing and corpses doesn't belong in a theater. Despite being animated, the Snafu shorts were classified military material. They played in barracks, briefing rooms, and overseas bases, often late at night, after long days. The audience was exhausted men with rifles, not families in theaters. To keep those men awake, the films leaned into the things soldiers actually noticed: profanity, fear, sex, and death. Things that don't show up in Looney Tunes. That's why the tone is so different from anything else Warner Brothers made. The rules didn't apply.
Wouldn't you like to know?
I know what did it, what made the big hole. A new flying bazooka.
Number 45. The same animators who created Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Porky Pig were pulled into the project. Chuck Jones directed episodes. Friz Freleng contributed. The studio's best talent was redirected to military propaganda, and they were given one instruction: make it memorable. no limits. That freedom changed everything. Suddenly, animators who'd spent years working under strict studio codes had permission to go further. Swearing, nudity, violence, all approved. Most of them never got that freedom again.
What'd you expect, sailor? The Army made this picture.
Number 44. The full phrase, used constantly by real soldiers, was unprintable. So the military cleaned it up. Situation normal, all fouled up. Except fouled wasn't the original word. Everyone knew it. That wink was built into the character from the start. His name is a swear word. His whole existence is a joke about how messed up things always are. Soldiers recognized it instantly. That recognition made them trust the cartoon in a way they didn't trust official training films. And the language inside the cartoons matched the name.
Ain't this swell? I fixed things. I told you I could. What a camp. No more discipline. Boy, am I good.
Number 43. The exact documentation is hard to verify today, but what's consistent is that the joke made it into the finished film. It wasn't a mistake. It was cleared for military audiences. Later prints quietly removed it. At some point after the war, someone decided the joke had gone too far, but during wartime, it stayed in. That tells you exactly who these films were made for, and how differently the military treated entertainment behind closed doors. And that wasn't the only line that disappeared.
Hooray for Snafu, gives us all limousines.
Number 42, Snafu stares, then he dies. That's the structure of booby traps. Female figures appear, drawn provocatively, exaggerated, and Snafu follows them like a dog. The cartoon equates lust with a tripwire. The punchline is an explosion. The message is blunt. Desire makes you careless. Carelessness gets you killed. Animators knew soldiers would pay attention to certain visuals, so they weaponized those visuals. The bait was the lesson. And it wasn't subtle, because subtlety doesn't work on exhausted men at midnight.
Who in the bloomin' blue blazers are you? Technical ferry. First class.
Number 41. Tiny wings, a stogie, a smirk. At first, he seems like comic relief, but his role is darker. The fairy gives Snafu exactly what he wants. Shortcuts, easy answers, instant gratification, and every single time it ends in disaster. He's not a helper, he's a test. The cartoon is warning soldiers. If something looks too easy, it's a trap. And the fairy never apologizes. He just watches Snafu suffer.
I beg pardon, sir, but you hear all that humming? I got a suspicion. The Germans are coming!
Number 40. Snafu asks for something lazy. The fairy grants it. Then reality collapses. Equipment fails, missions fall apart, sometimes Snafu dies. The structure repeats across multiple episodes. Soldiers would have recognized the pattern quickly. And that was the point. Repetition builds instinct. Every time the fairy appeared, the audience knew what was coming. They weren't laughing at surprise, they were laughing at inevitability. That rhythm was borrowed from theatrical cartoons, but weaponized for training.
The first man in history to use camouflage was Adam. Back in the Garden of Eden.
39. Snafu says something careless, a small comment, an innocent detail. And the cartoon follows that comment as it spreads, from person to person, bar to bar, until it reaches enemy ears. Ships sink, people die, all because of a throwaway line. The short plays like propaganda, but also like a nightmare. The music darkens, the tone shifts. By the end, the audience isn't laughing at Snafu, they're horrified by him. That horror was intentional.
There's a burlesque theater where the boys like to go to see Queenie the cutie, the burlesque show.
Number 38. Snafu writes home, including innocent details, weather, location, mood. The cartoon shows how each detail can be decoded by enemy intelligence. What feels harmless becomes a security breach. The letter transforms into a weapon. And Snafu never realizes it. The visual style shifts mid-cartoon, becoming surreal and paranoid. By this point, the series isn't just teaching rules, it's training soldiers to distrust their own instincts. And that paranoia was the goal.
Important announcement. This camp is now run under new management. Relaxation. More money.
Number 37. Each cartoon isolates a different weakness and shows how it leads to disaster. Animators were given briefs by military advisors outlining specific behaviors to discourage. Then they turned those briefs into comedy. The cartoons feel scattershot, but they weren't. They formed a curriculum. Watch enough of them and you'd internalized a full set of survival behaviors. Soldiers didn't think of it as training, but that's exactly what it was.
Now, in the German army, mein lieber Herr, our weapons work fine.
Number 36. Warner Brothers made the animation rougher on purpose. They could have made these films look polished. They had the talent. But smoother animation would have felt too slick, too far from the soldiers' reality. So the style stayed loose. Characters moved jerkily. Backgrounds were minimal. The roughness made the films feel less like Hollywood and more like something made just for them. That intimacy was part of the persuasion. Soldiers trusted the cartoons more because they didn't look like advertisements.
I want a lawyer! Get me a lawyer!
Number 35. He gave Snafu a whiny, slightly dumb quality. Snafu sounds like a guy you'd avoid in your unit. Not stupid enough to pity, just annoying enough to resent. Blanc knew how to make voices memorable. He'd been doing it for years. But Snafu wasn't meant to be loved. He was meant to be mocked. That balance, recognizable but unlikable, is harder than it sounds. Blanc nailed it, and his voice became the sound of military failure.
Say, where are my troops? Troops! Troops!
Number 34. Dr. Seuss helped write these cartoons. Yes, that Dr. Seuss. While children today know him for rhymes and cats in hats, during World War II, he was working for the Army's film division. Seuss understood rhythm. He understood insult. He understood how repetition drills ideas into tired minds. His children's books would later use the same techniques, but during the war, he aimed them at soldiers. His involvement was never advertised. Most people who watched Snafu had no idea who wrote the scripts. Decades later, it's still the strangest credit on his resume.
I just learned a secret. It's a honey. It's a pip. But the enemy is listening, so I'll never let it slip.
Number 33. The lines have a bouncy, rhythmic quality, almost sing-songy. They're easy to remember. Easy to repeat, easy to mock your buddy with later. That wasn't an accident. Seuss knew catchphrases stick, so he wrote Snafu's dumbest lines to be quotable. Soldiers would leave the screenings repeating the jokes, and every repetition reinforced the lesson underneath. The comedy was a delivery system. The payload was compliance.
Now the military secret that I carry in my brain, I keep in safe deposit with a padlock and chain.
Number 32. Newsreels of actual battles played first. Grim footage, explosions, bodies. Then the projector clicked and a cartoon character stumbled on screen. The tonal whiplash was intentional. After grim reality, the cartoon offered relief, but laced with its own warnings. Laughter lowered defenses. Then the message slipped in. Programmers understood pacing. They knew when audiences were tired, bored, or tense. Snafu always arrived at the moment men were most receptive.
And look at the job that they hand out to me, VP.
31. There were Snafu shorts about aviation, about naval protocol, about infantry tactics. Each one was written for a particular audience with particular risks. That level of customization was unusual for wartime animation. Most propaganda was broad. Snafu was targeted. The Army treated these films like specialized tools. Not entertainment, but equipment. And just like equipment, some of it was kept out of general circulation.
Listen, you guys, don't give me none of that stuff. I'm no dummy.
30. Let's take a breath, because this is where it stops being funny. 29. The short was called Going Home. It followed Snafu imagining his return from war, complete with a joke about a weapon so powerful it could end everything. The problem? The description came too close to something real. The exact connection is disputed, but what's verifiable is that officials saw the film and panicked. The short was shelved immediately. Some accounts link it to the atomic bomb program, still classified at the time. Others say it simply revealed too much about emerging technology. Either way, it never screened, and it stayed buried for decades.
The British hold the hills just west. A pillbox here, machine gun nest, 200 medium tanks, the best.
Number 28. Several Snafu cartoons were completed but never distributed. Some were deemed too explicit. Others revealed training details the Army later wanted hidden. After the war, many prints were destroyed or lost. The ones that survived ended up in military archives, unseen by the public. For years, most Americans had no idea these films existed at all. The cartoons were made to be forgotten, and they almost were.
Hey, the troop ship bound for Africa pulls out at half
half past 4. Calling all bullfighters.
Number 27. Snafu shorts contained accurate depictions of military equipment, tactics, and vulnerabilities. What worked as a training tool during wartime became a security risk afterward. Officials worried that foreign powers could study the cartoons for intelligence, so they kept them locked down long after the war ended. The humor didn't matter, the information did. And that secrecy extended to the people who made them.
The soldiers got a secret, but I bet we find it out.
Number 26. Warner Brothers employees worked under government contract. For years, even mentioning involvement was discouraged. Some artists went back to making children's cartoons immediately after the war. They carried the experience with them, but rarely discussed it. The tonal shift must have been surreal. One year you're animating military death. The next, you're drawing singing rabbits. Few industries demanded that kind of compartmentalization.
Hello, Ma. I got a secret. I can only drop a tip. Don't breathe a word to no one, but I'm going on a trip.
Number 25. Chuck Jones later called the Snafu shorts some of his best work. Decades afterward, he admitted that the freedom he had on those films shaped his later style. No censors, no sponsors, just a clear goal and permission to be ruthless. The lessons he learned making Snafu showed up in his post-war cartoons. Faster timing, darker humor, more willingness to let characters suffer. He never made anything quite like Snafu again, but its fingerprints stayed on everything he did after.
Look me over, Jackson. This is really all root. Snafu lets you dress up in a suit that is zoot.
Number 24. Animators experimented with visual styles, pacing, and structure they wouldn't risk on commercial releases. Some of those experiments worked, some didn't. But the failures didn't cost them their jobs. They cost the Army a few minutes of screening time. That low-stakes freedom led to innovations. Techniques developed for Snafu showed up later in theatrical releases, refined and polished. Military propaganda became a secret R&D lab for American animation.
Hello, baby. Hiya, pussy. Say you're a lefty trick.
Number 23. Some episodes showed nudity. Female characters appeared topless. The drawings were quick, exaggerated, but unmistakable. This wasn't innuendo, it was skin. Why? Because classification allowed it. These films weren't subject to Hollywood's production code. They were military material, screened for adults only, in controlled settings. That freedom let animators cross lines that wouldn't be crossed again in American animation for 50 years. The Snafu shorts remain the most explicit official cartoons ever made. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because nobody stopped them.
Another day. Nuts. If I could only get out a drill.
Number 22. Wartime humor included caricatures and stereotypes that reflected the propaganda of the era. Enemy nations were drawn with exaggerated features. Allies weren't always treated respectfully either. Decades later, these images are jarring. They reveal how casually prejudice was woven into entertainment. But that ugliness is also why the films matter as historical documents. They show what was acceptable and what was encouraged in ways polished histories often erase.
If you're asking me, it's a pain in the prat.
Number 21. Animators submitted outlines. Officers approved or rejected them. Sometimes jokes were cut for security reasons. Sometimes they were added for emphasis. This wasn't creative freedom in the usual sense. It was collaboration with censors who had different priorities than studio executives. The result was humor shaped by military logic. What made soldiers laugh was kept. What distracted from the lesson was removed. It was entertainment optimized for compliance.
'Cause when I learn a secret, boy, I zipper up my lip.
Number 20. The screenings were mandatory. You didn't pick the cartoon. You were ordered to sit. The films played during briefings, before meals, after drills. That context matters. The jokes landed differently when the audience had no choice but to listen. Laughter became a kind of pressure release, and the lessons embedded in that laughter became harder to resist. Voluntary entertainment persuades differently than mandatory programming.
You're boss of the works. Now take over, Snafu.
Number 19. Snafu episodes sometimes broke the fourth wall. Characters would reference the audience, narrators would wink at the joke. That self-awareness was strategic. It made the manipulation feel less like manipulation. If the cartoon admits it's trying to teach you something, it seems more honest, even when it's not. Soldiers appreciated the honesty, and that appreciation made them more receptive. The manipulation included admitting the manipulation.
Boy, this is really swank. I'll ride in a tank.
Number 18. The messages weren't always consistent. Different writers, different directors, different priorities. The Army wanted results, not coherence. Soldiers absorbed contradictions without complaint. They were used to it. Orders from above rarely made perfect sense. The cartoons mirrored the confusion they were meant to address, and somehow that made them feel more authentic.
Snafu is a soldier. He's a patriotic, conscientious guy.
Number 17. Between 1943 and 1945, production moved fast. Each episode addressed a current concern. Some feel rushed, others repeat jokes, but the volume meant soldiers saw Snafu constantly. The character became inescapable. Even the name became a reflex, a sanitized swear word you could say out loud. Repetition was the strategy. The more often Snafu failed, the harder it was to forget him.
Don't breed a word to no one, but he's going on a trip.
Number 16. No sequels. No revivals. No farewell episode. Snafu had served his purpose. The character was retired alongside the weapons and uniforms. Soldiers who'd watched him for years never saw him again. A figure that had been everywhere was suddenly nowhere. That abrupt ending is part of what made Snafu fade from memory. He wasn't a brand to be extended, he was a tool to be discarded. Number 15. Prints stayed in government archives. Some were destroyed. Some deteriorated. The few that circulated were low-quality copies passed among collectors. Most Americans born after 1950 had never heard of Private Snafu. The character was erased from popular memory as thoroughly as if he'd never existed. Only in the internet age did the cartoons resurface, uploaded, shared, and rediscovered by people who couldn't believe what they were watching.
I'd make a few changes. That's just what I do.
Number 14. The casual violence. The topless drawings. The stereotypes. The deaths played for laughs. All of it clashes with expectations about what old animation looks like. People expect Bugs Bunny. They get a horror show with a punchline. That shock is part of why the cartoons matter. They reveal a side of American media history that's been largely hidden, not because it was illegal, but because it was inconvenient.
Now, who in hell do you suppose it was that let my secret out?
Number 13. Military psychologists studied how soldiers learn under stress. They tested what messages stuck. They refined techniques across dozens of films. The pacing wasn't intuition, it was data. The jokes weren't random, they were selected for retention. Snafu wasn't just entertainment, he was an experiment. And the results shaped training programs for decades afterward.
I wish I'd joined the tank corps. Them guys got it sweet.
Number 12. That happened dozens of times after 1945. Veterans who'd worked in military propaganda or studied its effects took jobs in commercial marketing. They brought the techniques with them. Repetition, embarrassment, fear, humor. The same tools that kept soldiers awake now sold cigarettes and soap. That continuity is rarely discussed, but it shaped American media in ways still visible today.
I wish the hell I'd joined the fleet. The fleet?
Number 11. Notice anything? He doesn't look distinctive. He could be anyone. Any soldier, any branch, any background. That blankness was strategic. Every viewer could project themselves onto him, or project someone they knew. The lack of specificity made the lessons universal. If Snafu had been too memorable, soldiers might have dismissed him as a type. By making him nobody, animators made him everybody.
Oh, the Air Force gets the glory and the Navy gets the cheers.
Number 10. Before the war, Snafu was military slang, crude and unofficial. After millions of soldiers watched the character, the word spread. By the 1950s, it appeared in newspapers, novels, and everyday conversation. Most people using it had no idea it started as a censored curse in a classified cartoon. A buried film helped reshape the American vocabulary. That's influence. Invisible, but permanent.
Hey, give me some magazines to read for when I'm on the ship.
Number 9. The exact claim is hard to verify, but what's consistent across accounts is that soldiers retained information from Snafu's shorts longer than from lectures, manuals, or standard films. The humor made the difference. Decades of educational research have confirmed what the Army discovered intuitively. People remember what makes them laugh. Emotion encodes memory. Snafu wasn't just effective for its time. He anticipated principles that modern educators still use.
Home. They got it soft back there. They don't even know there's a war going on.
Number 8. Watch the full series and you're reading a map of military fear. Loose talk, carelessness, overconfidence, desire. Every episode targets a specific anxiety. Together, they form a portrait of institutional paranoia. These weren't random topics. They were the mistakes officers had seen, the disasters they hoped to prevent, the weaknesses they believed would get men killed. The cartoons are documents of fear, disguised as comedy. Number 7. Modern military training uses video, simulation, and interactive media. But no current program mocks, embarrasses, and kills a recurring character for educational purposes. Contemporary values wouldn't allow it. The content would be deemed too offensive, too blunt, too manipulative. That shift reflects changing ideas about how institutions should speak to their members. Whether the change is progress depends on what you think training is for. Number 6. Their names appeared in military records, not theatrical posters. The work was government contract. For years, the credits stayed hidden. Decades later, animation historians pieced together who did what. But by then, many of the artists had died. Their contribution to the war effort, thousands of hours spent drawing failure and death, went unrecognized during their lifetimes. The men who made Snafu fought a quieter war and received no medals for it. Number 5. Scratches, splices, faded frames. These films were run over and over on projectors that weren't always maintained in conditions that weren't ideal. The physical damage is evidence, proof of how many times Snafu died in front of how many audiences. No one expected the films to last. No one planned for preservation. That neglect is its own kind of historical verdict. Number 4. The exact date is unclear. No press release, no public announcement. The films simply stopped being restricted. They became available to researchers and collectors who knew where to look. Most people didn't. That silence is fitting. The series was never meant to be remembered. Its disappearance was built into its purpose. Number 3. Animation programs use them to teach history, propaganda, and technique. Media scholars analyze their persuasion strategies. Historians cite them as primary sources. What was once classified training material is now academic curriculum. The shorts that soldiers were ordered to watch are now assigned to students. That transformation from military secret to scholarly subject took 80 years. And it's still incomplete. Number 2. Cells were thrown away. Scripts were lost. Storyboards weren't saved. The animator's notes, the military memos, the revision marks, gone. What remains are the finished films themselves, pieced together from scattered sources and varying quality. The series that taught soldiers how to keep secrets couldn't keep its own history intact. The documents that explain how it was made were treated the same way the Army treated Snafu himself. Useful, then disposable. Number 1. The character served his purpose. The war ended. The films were locked away. For decades, he existed only in the memories of aging veterans and the vaults of government archives. Then the internet brought him back. Uploads, forums, restorations. A character built for disposal became a cult artifact. Studied, quoted, impossible to unsee. The soldiers who watched him are mostly gone now. The animators who drew him are gone. The writers who scripted his failures, including Dr. Seuss, are gone. But the cartoons remain. Scratched, faded, offensive, and strange. The Army buried the footage. The credits stayed hidden. The deaths kept playing for laughs. They cleaned up the name and called it honesty. And the idiot who was never meant to be remembered became impossible to forget.